Good afternoon. It's Tuesday, the 13th of December 2016, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson. Well, the weather reports this morning are generally grey, cold, mizzy, some rain, but we have a report of sunshine from deep in the Middle East, so enjoy it while you can if you're there. But of course, we now know that this is the result of global warming, and we will have a special feature on global warming at the end of today's news.
Okay, well, let's start with Syria. The Syrian army has declared victory in Aleppo, according to most of the mainstream media today. Of course, there's the usual divide between the Russian press, the Syrian press, the Iranian press, and the Western press, who, well, we'll have a look and see what they're saying in a second. But Sputnik here reporting that they've officially liberated Aleppo after ousting rebels from their last bastions in the eastern parts of the city. And the Syrian Arab Army made significant advances, leaving only 3 residential blocks in the hands of anti-government forces. Well, what's been the result? While that's all been going on, of course, the Russians had opened up the humanitarian corridors. It seems quite a number went out through there, and 4,000 of them have now launched an offensive on Palmyra. Sergei Lavrov had that to say. He reckoned that the attack on Palmyra was orchestrated, and the Russian Defense Ministry also said that seizing on the suspension of active military action near Raqqa till spring by the US and international coalition, Islamic State devoted considerable forces to storm Palmyra, and they said that, of course, the Russian Air Force were not going to conduct airstrikes on Palmyra's residential areas, and that those were used that fact was used to reinforce the attacks. So, good news about Aleppo. Glad to see it finally done and dusted. The pressure will move to other parts of Syria, I've no doubt. But let's have a look at what the Western media was saying. Here we had some children celebrating the fact that the Aleppo was liberated, but they are Assad loyalists, apparently.
Yeah, well, we've seen this continually, Mike, the change of language in order to get the message across. So it's always rebels as far as UK press is concerned. It's never terrorists, although the people are clearly carrying out terrorist actions. And here we've got loyalists. So Assad loyalists, this is all part of the spin and propaganda to change people's views.
Absolutely. And of course, death of a revolution, because Aleppo civilians have been massacred, apparently, as Assad's forces took back the city. And, 82 of them, apparently, according to the United Nations, were being killed this morning as things were continuing. But of course, this is the message that the Western media wants to push out, that Assad is massacring his own people. Well, what's going on?
Before you take that one away, we have got a bit of truth there, because the Independent is calling it a revolution, and this is quite right. This is a West-inspired revolution.
Absolutely, it was a Western-inspired revolution.
So this is part of the colour revolution, which they're using the word. The revolution can't be a good term, so Independent is calling it as it is. It was a created revolution. And who created the revolution? The West.
Absolutely. But while this revolution's dying, of course, let's have a look at what's going on in Mosul. 103,000 civilians displaced since Iraq's Mosul op began. Well, of course, it's not just Iraq's Mosul op. It is the West's Mosul op as well, because we're providing the support for it. And it's just amusing. And I use that sort of ironically to contrast the story in Mosul. It's exactly the same type of operation going on, yet we're not too worried about what's happening civilians over there. We're only worried about what's happening civilians in Aleppo. The Sun a couple of days ago saying that 1,000 civilians have been killed in just a month since Allied troops began the struggle to liberate the ISIS-held city. And the Daily Mail reporting that Mosul doctors struggle to save civilians on the front line. So, we've got to say, Brian, that no death is acceptable. And we've got to remind ourselves that all this was absolutely avoidable. It was our governments that caused these people's deaths. It wasn't the Iraqi government. It wasn't the Syrian government. It's our governments, because as you pointed out, this situation in Aleppo, the situation in Syria, created by our governments, supported by our governments, funded by our governments, and these are not civil wars. These are attacks on the sovereign nation states by other countries.
It's not only regime change, Mike, is it though? Because we can now see, if we take Iraq, that the country has been destabilized and then held in that chaotic, destabilized state. So it isn't just that the West went in and overturned the nasty regime and then we come out and then life goes on as normal for the Iraqis. What we've got there is a continuing bloodbath, continuing turmoil. So nothing productive achieved in the country at all, just more thousands of deaths, as you pointed out. And this, of course, is the deliberate agenda we're seeing, which is regime change in the Middle East, which is pushed by the UK and the US governments for whatever it is agenda that they're trying to push. Is this George Soros's movement to destabilize countries to help build the, whatever we want to call it now, the New World Order, the rules-based order? Is this George Soros, or is this British soft power coming through the City of London?
A combination of both, I think. But to add insult to injury, here we go. The BBC this morning, BBC's Today programme finished 5 minutes early this morning, Brian, in order to promote this charity appeal for Yemen. This is disgusting, I have to say. Yemen, of course, being presented as another civil war, which in fact it's nothing of the kind, and it's going to be used as an absolute propaganda pawn. So this war has been ignored for the last whatever number of years and months, and it's not going to be ignored anymore. So Claire Balding, the British television personality, is fronting this up, and of course she's highlighting starving children in Yemen, something that we've been highlighting for quite some time, and mainstream media didn't seem to care about since the beginning. If children are starving to death, let's just put it in perspective, Brian, this is our fault in Britain. If Boris Johnson is admitting that the Saudis are running proxy wars, that's our fault, because we're supporting them to do so. We're selling them the arms. We're giving them the political support. It's no good, giving money to a charity appeal like this, fronted by a television personality who really didn't bother to get the facts for herself before becoming the poster child for this. And it is a propaganda campaign. And she certainly hasn't spoken out on it since the issues in Yemen began. So I would say that if children are suffering in Yemen, we've got to deal with the causes of the problem and not try to treat the symptoms.
And it's doubly hypocritical of the BBC, of course, Mike, because we've got the BBC running through its own charity, BBC Media Action, a group of people who are openly boasting of going into sovereign states to destabilise the government. And that was the statement by BBC Media Action with respect to Syria. One of their senior women boasting that the BBC Media Action team was in Syria to work with those who wanted change. You had, she says, you had an authoritarian government, and to change that situation, we had to work with the people who wanted change. So this is subversion under the guise of a charity, but in reality it's the BBC, because BBC Media Action shares office facilities and the pension pot with the BBC. So the BBC, not only a propaganda machine, but helping to work inside a country to destabilise it.
Absolutely.
Outrageous.
Okay, let's go to Ukraine then, and Angela Merkel saying that really, Russia, sanctions, we got to have more of it, more sanctions for Russia over Ukraine. She said that they have to be extended because of lack of progress in implementing the Minsk ceasefire agreement. She said it would be necessary to extend the sanctions against Russia again, although we would have wished for better progress on implementation of the process. Well, what's going on in Ukraine itself? I'm sorry, I've forgotten to put the slide in on this, but basically what's going on is they're continuing with their missile tests right up against the Russian border, and they are building up their military. So their military is now 250,000 troops. Very quickly that's happened, and they're spending 5% of their GDP on arming themselves at the moment in the Ukraine.
If I could be a bit sarcastic here, Mike, I can't understand why they'd need 250,000 troops. That is normally considered the number of troops in an army, as a rough figure, goes up and down. But why would they want 250? Because apparently Britain can do the job wherever it's needed with sort of 82,000 troops, according to the Conservative government. So why do we need the massive troop numbers in because on the eastern border?
Because Ukraine is going to be the next front, of course. 5% of GDP, we're only spending 2% of GDP, and they are going to increase their military spending 10% annually, apparently. So that's not designed to threaten Russia at all.
Or it is.
Yeah. In the meantime, Michael Fallon is explaining what Britain is doing to expand its military role around the planet, Brian, because apparently we're going to broaden is the term he used, our defence footprint, and we're going to create three new regional hubs. So these are British Defence Staff hubs to be set up in the Gulf, Asia Pacific and West Africa, and specifically in Dubai, Singapore and Abuja in Nigeria. And as you can see there, Michael Fallon, the Defence Secretary, said setting up new British defence staffs will broaden our global reach, support regional stability and security, and ensure greater cooperation with our partners. Do you think that Britain setting these organisations up in these regional areas as they're described is going to support regional stability?
No, the opposite, Mike. I think the aim of this is to basically infiltrate nation states and infiltrate regions. So by duplicating defence staff, you've got everything in there. You've got military expertise, boots, machines, tanks, whatever it is. You've got the military expertise, but you've then got the political side with it, and you've got the defence procurement side. So this is like taking the structure in UK and mimicking it on a smaller scale in these other areas. What are you going to do with this? You're going to be working, first of all, alongside governments. Then you're going to be bringing in the military-industrial complex. So you're going to be bringing in the procurement trains. And in no time at all, we will be in control of the military of these other areas. So I think what we're watching here is British soft power. And then the other bit we could probably state is that, of course, if we look at UK at the moment, UK is clearly bankrupt. The country is falling apart. The British government's not concerned about that. What it's talking about is injecting military power overseas. So something else is going on here. Somebody in the chat box has commented that you can almost see the strings attached to Mr. Fallon. He's the puppet. Who's pulling those strings? It's got to be the big financiers. It's got to be the City of London.
So they are apparently demonstrating that the UK's defence posture is international by design. What are they trying to do? Re-establish the empire?
I don't think the empire's ever gone away. It's just changed form a bit. But obviously what we're seeing now is the intent to put British power and influence back out overseas. So it's quite clever if you think of it in terms of the fact there is no Brexit, of course, but Europe is in a chaotic state. Well done, the British, because they've achieved that. And while Europe is in a chaotic state, here goes Britain to, if you like, reinvigorate the empire. And it was fascinating that for one of the talks, we came across material that was posted on the website of the Scottish Parliament. And the debate was, what was the best route for world government? Was it to be via the European Union or via the Commonwealth? And that document, I have to say, disappeared, but we certainly saw it. And it made us think, because at the time you said, well, why would they possibly be looking at the Commonwealth? And now I think we can see that Europe's been parked to one side, and let's open the next box of tricks.
Absolutely. Okay, well, here's good news. Brian, you must be really impressed with this. The new tanker RFA Tide Race is unveiled in South Korea, because it's not being built in Britain, of course, or on the Clyde. It's being built halfway around the world. And UK Chief of Material Vice Admiral Simon Lister said, with the naming of RFA Tide Race, the Royal Navy looks forward to another new arrival into our future fleet. So there you go.
And it's fascinating language, because he recognises that we don't have a fleet at the moment, although we've got the second Sea Lord apparently tweeting out that the Royal Navy is growing. How he works this out, I don't know, because anybody wants to plot the number of ships will see that it's been falling dramatically for a great many years. But second Sea Lord, who has tweeted out that he's very interested in the quality of cakes, he's been praising the cuisine in the Royal Navy. He thinks the number of ships is growing. And here we've got a statement that everybody's happy because this tanker is going to join the future fleet. But I hear there's some problems possibly with the F-35.
Well, before we get on to that, I was just going to say, assuming we don't have any engineering capability in the Royal Navy anymore, we've closed down all the training establishments. Does that mean we're going to have South Koreans on board to maintain engines and other things?
Could be anybody, Mike, because of course we've already got Americans and I believe some Canadians and certainly French who are operating in that capacity and have been for some time. So what we can see is that Britain's military is being hollowed out from the inside, it's being hollowed out, and it's being made international. And our prediction back in 2008, I think it was, our UK column prediction was that the two big new aircraft carriers, the Queen Elizabeth class, would be jointly manned with the French.
So international by design?
International by design, yeah.
Yes, well, the F-35 then. Well, this is all coming from a tweet that Donald Trump has pushed out, saying the F-35 program and cost is out of control. Billions of dollars can and will be saved on military and other purchases after January the 20th. And many people wondering what he means by that. Speculation. Well, in fact, Lockheed Martin's lost $4 billion in the value of its share prices today following that tweet. And so many people asking, is this the end of the F-35 fighter project? And really, Brian, it should be. If each jet is costing $100 million, and they don't fly, and they can only fire their cannon when they're tied to the ground, and this kind of thing. I mean,
the really sad thing is, Mike, is of course all the Americans need to do is go out in the desert and get all of the Harriers back out of mothball and refit them and reactivate them. So it's a very interesting situation. Yeah, but the Queen Elizabeth class aircraft carriers possibly with no aircraft at all. And I believe they're going to be sent to the South China Sea.
Yes.
Future fleet with no aircraft sent to the South China Seas because the Chinese the Chinese are apparently dangerous enemies, which is why David Cameron and Theresa May have invited them in to rebuild our nuclear power structures. It is all a bit confusing, or Alice in Wonderland.
International by design. Right. Sir Alan Duncan, what's he got to say? He's saying, I'm very pleased to be standing in for Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, who's been in the Gulf following the very successful visit of the Prime Minister to the Gulf Cooperation Council last week. So what's he standing in for him at? That's the EU Foreign Affairs Council. And of course, Sir Alan Duncan is the Minister for Europe. Bit strange since we're leaving Europe, but anyway, there you go. He said, we are very saddened and appalled by the bombs in Istanbul and Cairo. This illustrates the constant terrorist threat that Turkey is facing at the moment, and I don't think we have to be mindful, that we all have to be mindful of that following the attempted coup of the 15th of July. So clearly he's confused about where Cairo is. But anyway, we'll move on. He said that one of the main topics, this is yesterday, at the Foreign Affairs Council, would be Syria. And that similarly illustrates a continuing terrorist threat. He's appalled by what's been happening in Aleppo. and the only solution is a political solution, but this will require a change of attitude on the part of the Russians. So they've got to change, and he's going to argue for that at the European Foreign Affairs Council. I'm not quite sure that Russia's represented at that, but anyway, in the meantime, he said, I hope that our presence illustrates that although we are leaving the European Union, while we remain a member, we're going to play the fullest possible part in everything that it's doing. So there you go.
Yeah, well, I smile at that and chuckle because, of course, we're not leaving the European Union. What we're seeing is a dramatic speeding up of the integration, and we're going to show a little bit of that in just a second.
Now, a few moments ago, I believe I had Angela Merkel on screen saying that we had to increase sanctions on Russia.
Yes.
Okay, well, at the European Foreign Affairs Council meeting, Federica Mogherini was speaking, and she said, no, we did not discuss sanctions at all, and there was no member state asking for additional work on sanctions.
Well, just a little bit of confusion because they don't actually know what's happening themselves. This is the Alice in Wonderland effect.
Absolutely. So anyway, what were they talking about at this? Well, in her briefing, she began by talking about Africa, because they've decided altogether to increase their engagement with all of Africa on many different strands of work in partnership that is strategic for us Europeans. And next year, it will be for the European Union an African year, with a summit coming up in November and the G20 German presidency and the G7 Italian presidency, all focusing on Africa. So the EU is going to be focusing on Africa next year. It's disintegrating. The euro is dead, but they're focusing on Africa, so that's all good. Mogherini said, we will make sure that our increased work with the continent, especially with a focus on youth and women, will be strategically carried out from all of us. So that's really good. And then she said that they're also going to. They also discussed implementation of the migration compacts, and she's presenting this to the heads of state and government on Thursday at the European Council. That'll be tomorrow. So migration compacts for clearly increasing migration, and they've seen some positive trends, she said, and so that's all very good as well. Of course, they talked about Syria. And she was complaining that she didn't still have access to Eastern Aleppo, and she was urging those that have responsibility to guarantee access to Eastern Aleppo to allow humanitarian aid to civilians. And of course, she was discussing last week with John Kerry and Sergei Lavrov and Stefan de Mistura various things to do with Syria and the support of the United Nations involved with Syria and so on. And as I say, she was asked specifically about sanctions on Russia and said, no, we're not going to do anything like that.
Right.
So there you go. Now, some good news. Boris Johnson has done something right for once. Because, you know, this man, our very own tame war criminal, Tony Blair, went cap in hand to Boris to ask for more money. Brian?
Because he needs to expand his trust empire.
No. This is because since Tony Blair left government, of course, and left as a politician, he has been receiving £3 million a year for his personal protection. And so he went cap in hand to Boris. For some reason, Boris is responsible for Tony Blair's protection and was wanting another £100,000 to increase his personal protection because, of course, he's going to be spending more time in Britain, where it seems he is concerned that lots of people want to string him up or something. I'm not quite sure. But Boris told him to really forget it. In fact, Boris said, sadly, I feel the hand of prudence on my shoulder. At this time, I can't provide you with any additional money.
Well, I think that's really, really sad, the thought that Tony's not sleeping too well at night because he's finally worked out that people have got him sussed and he's getting a bit nervous. I think that's quite sad.
Yes.
Right. Well, a reminder that UK column will finish on Friday. That's the 16th for a break over the Christmas period. We will be back in the new year on the 4th of January. So please try and remember that and spread it around because we had a few people last year. I think we're a little bit worried we disappeared. We don't intend to disappear, but we do need that Christmas break. And also like to put out a reminder for this court case, which is for Tom Crawford. This is He's charged with the fact that he did criminal damage to his own home. This is a bit puzzling because the other half of the case is that it wasn't his home, it was the bank's home. Difficult to work it out, really. He needs support in the court on the 16th to see justice being done. So if you're in the Nottingham area, that is an important court case. And of course, something we know is that most of Britain's judges don't actually like the public to be in the courtroom because it apparently makes them nervous. Okay, so if you can, please support that and the 16th for Tom Crawford. Now, I'd just like to bring in this, talking of the judicial system. It's part of a letter from Melanie Shaw, and I've got to say what is happening to this lady is just utterly outrageous. I'll read a little piece of this. She says it's bad, there's no evidence at court. I'll go guilty to anything. I'm being charged in jail weekly for offences now, and they're piling up as outside court charges. It's insane. I don't even leave my cell. I'm abused daily. It's become normal. I've gone guilty and now should be sentenced on the 11th. I believe I'm being set up and will remain in jail for a decade. Britain's equivalent to Nelson Mandela. It's hard to be positive. I've no cash to spend on coffee or shampoo, but sod it, I'll cope. I stand by my decision to whistleblow. Christmas in jail, just another day. And then she says she hopes to meet the person who sent her the letter. And of course, many of Melanie's letters are simply not reaching her. And we will say once again, why is this lady in prison? We're not fully sure. Is she on remand? Or has she actually been sentenced? We don't know. She doesn't know. But what we're very, very sure of is the fact that she is in prison in order to silence her because of what she knows about the abuse and indeed death of children at Beechwood's Children's Home, Nottingham, and also the role of politicians. So we've got a little bit more to say on child abuse, but if anybody wants to write to Melanie Shaw, details of the prison address are on the UK Column website. Some letters are getting through. We suggest you do not send her money because there are indications this is disappearing into the hands of prison staff. Stamps may get through, your letter may get through, but it would seem that it's only going to be letters and Christmas cards that are going to keep Melanie in a good frame of mind over Christmas. Right, well, let's have a look. For those of you who think that Brexit is real, we say it is not real and has never been real. And here is further evidence that actually what the government is now pushing home ever more quickly is the devolution agenda, which is actually going to build the European model inside UK. So local Plymouth Herald here says, Plymouth defends secret talks over super mayor. So this is your super mayors coming in, Mike. We've commented that this is a scam being sold as more say and power for ordinary people, but the reality is secret deals, big money, unaccountable bureaucrats and fat cats. And can we justify that? Well, we think we can. Let's do a bit of analysis on what's actually going on here. So here's our headline, and what we've got coming in is EU-style mayors. This is part of the dialogue in the article. It says that 15 councils across the region working on a joint bid to take over powers and fundings now controlled for Whitehall. This is a group that's been working together for some time. How they were created we'll come on to, but you can see the discussion there, regional, and they want more power and more funding. But Plymouth and Exeter refused to go along with the vote for the other councils. The majority of the councils are working exclusively with an organisation called Heart of the South West, which is one of the local enterprise partnerships across the country. And Plymouth said, we believe that there'll be no significant devolution deal for the Heart of the South West, given the lack of consensus on the issue of an elected mayor slant leader. Now, the slant leader is in the article. That hasn't been put in by the UK column. I just see the Führer coming in there, Mike. This is the leader with responsibility for receiving devolved powers and financial resources from Whitehall. And then Plymouth and Exeter say, we feel it would be remiss of us not to explore the sub-regional opportunities for further and faster delivery of economic growth with a deal that doesn't rule out an elected mayor leader. So they are desperate to get the super mayor in post.
And that's what they do. They put it under the veneer of economic growth. Everything is the same with the Northern Powerhouse. Everything is being driven by economic growth, but there's a political agenda at work under the surface.
Yeah, a deep political agenda, and we can break it down a bit more. Let's go on through. So we've got another headline here. Super mayor for Plymouth and Exeter could deliver hundreds of millions of pounds. Now, this is a country at the moment where the government says it's no money for schools, no money for the military, no money for anything. But here's the big headline, hundreds of millions of pounds. And in the picture, we've got Sajid Javid. We'll come on to him in a minute. So what's the plan? An area of South Devon stretching from Plymouth to Exeter could be run by a single directly elected super mayor under radical new plans understood to have been discussed by the two city councils. It says understood because, of course, these were secret discussions and the public were not included. If it goes ahead, the plan could expect to bring in a cash windfall of hundreds of millions from the government. Devolution deal already agreed with councils in the Solent, Plymouth area, Portsmouth area, is understood to have come with a dowry of some 900 million. So virtually £1 billion, Mike.
Dowry? That's an interesting word. Used as very feudalist in its language, isn't it?
Well, that's appropriate because we're heading back to a feudal state. But look at the vast amounts of money from a government that says there's no money. Yeah. There's no money. And if we add this bit in here, it says in October, Mr. Javid told council leaders that they could forget any meaningful devolution unless they embrace the idea of an elected mayor for the whole region. So here you can see the heavy-handed government approach. Unless you do what we say, we want these mayors in post, you're not going to get the money. Mm. So we've put this together in a diagram because it helps a lot. So here is our article. And this is the dictatorship being built. Mr. Javid, here he is. So Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government. But let's not forget he was apparently a former managing director for Deutsche Bank. Are they insolvent, Mike?
Yes.
So he's pretty good at running money then?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is where it stems from, the growth deals, firing up local economies. This is the claim from the British government. But we've got a British government with no money that magics a minimum sum of 12 billion for growth deals across the country. And what do they say this is about? Well, growth deals are a, quote, revolution, unquote, in the way our economy is run. For the first time ever, housing, infrastructure and other funding is being brought together in a single pot and put directly into the hands of local authorities and businesses to spend the way they know best.
Because we have so much evidence that local authorities know how to spend money.
Yeah.
I mean,
so this is centralisation. They claim that basically this is giving people power, but actually it's government power drilling down to the lowest level. So let's have a look at these enterprise areas, 39 of them created across the country. Those are the little red dots where these plans are being put into place. The local southwest one, which we've just mentioned, is Heart of the Southwest. And then we can bring in that quote, Mr. Javid told council leaders they could forget any meaningful devolution unless they embrace the idea of an elected mayor for the whole region. So this is the government creating money out of nothing and then using it to bribe local authorities in order to say what the political landscape is going to look like in the next couple of years.
Now, I mean, we've been mainly talking about Devon, and Plymouth to Exeter, which is Devon, but I see a little red dot in Cornwall there. I mean, Cornwall has a sterling reputation for handling large amounts of money and putting it to really good use.
Or not.
Yes.
With the same with Cornwall, and of course the one I can easily quote with Cornwall is £320 million of Objective 1 funding, which simply disappeared, absolutely disappeared. And to this date, nobody has obtained a copy of the overall accounts of where that 320 million was spent. Why does the government want to inject money into an area with no financial controls? Because, of course, this breeds fraud and corruption. And once individuals have been corrupted, the government can control them completely by threats to do with fraud and corruption, or, of course, simply blackmail over possible exposure.
And this is the European model because, of course, in Europe, there are no audited accounts because there are no financial controls and money's untrackable.
Well, indeed, and I think we're on the 19th year of no audited and signed off accounts for the European Union. So let's have a little look at the heart of the Southwest. This is part of their minutes. There's very few detailed documents about what they do, and I was unable to establish how people were appointed to Heart of the Southwest initially. But I was interested in this little statement down here. It says the LEP should work with local authorities, education and businesses in all further developments of this regional narrative and help feed into the government's thinking on industrial strategy. So this is a political agenda, Mike. There is no doubt about it. This is a centralised political agenda which is now being rammed into the heart of local communities. And they're using both public sector and corporate people to do it. So if we just move on to the next one here, you get an idea of the sort of material. What are they talking about? Well, they're saying the Heart of Southwest LEP is a business-led partnership of 4 county and unitary authorities, 15 district authorities, 4 universities and 10 further education colleges. So what they're telling you is that corporate interests are now going to control the public sector. It's very, very clear what's happening there. And of course, the other thing is, if you bring in the universities and the colleges, then young people are not going to be able to escape from this system at all. Right, well, change of subject here. We'll come back on to children and, to sex offences. This is the Herald again. And Reader kindly sent this through to us, saying it was very interesting. A police officer had been sacked for a sexual assault. Now, the police say, well, this didn't occur on duty, so we're going to take disciplinary action. But to me, it says criminal offence, but don't worry, because the police are going to protect their own. So this is what was said. The allegations were of a serious sexual assault on an adult female and was said to amount to an abuse of authority, respect and courtesy, unlawful use of force and discreditable conduct under the police conduct regulations. And what's happening? Well, they determined that the identity of the officer should not be made public in the interest of the complainant and the harm that would be caused by publicity to other family members. And the case concluded just a day before a national report revealed that more than 300 officers have been accused of abusing their positions of authority for sexual gain. That's across the country. But no worry, because there's no serious problem with sexual crimes or abuse of children. The Norwegians, though, are taking a different view on things. And this is a report from the local Norwegian newspaper. Police break up massive Norwegian paedophile ring. And the significant thing is here that a former Norwegian Labour Party politician is one of the people who's actually been arrested as a part of these Operation Darkroom investigations. But we'll say happily, David Cameron has said that there are definitely no child abusers in British politics. It's those nasty Norwegian people that get involved with this. Melanie Shaw in prison, I think, because she and many others hold information which is very dangerous to the British government, because, of course, it says that members of Parliament have been involved in the trafficking and abuse of children. Well, should we be concerned as parents? I think we should. And thank you to another viewer for sending us this. Department of Education document just released. practice and improvement fund round 2, improving outcomes in a regionalised adoption system. So here we are, Mike. This is the European model now being forced through to do with children. But basically, we've got such a huge problem with these children. We don't know where they all are. We're still missing 300 Syrian children as a minimum. But the state is now going to introduce the regionalisation of the adoption system. And they boast it's well underway. The first wave of regional adoption agencies will go live by mid-2017. And we're in discussion with 19 projects covering 132 local authorities and 23 voluntary adoption agencies. So they are inviting people to bid for projects. And of course, what we know is people can make big money out of fostering and adoption of children.
So you have labelled this state trafficking children regionalised.
Yeah.
And this isn't about taking care of children. They are turning this into an industry.
This is a well-established industry. And if any of our viewers or listeners like to go and have a look at the bigger charities, Action for Children is one in my mind. You will see vast amounts of money, hundreds of millions of pounds in circulation around the supposed care of very, very vulnerable children. This is a little bit of the text on the inside of that document, and it says that we're interested in proposals which will bring together partners to provide a coordinated assessment and support offer and explore the regional delivery of the Adoption Support Fund. More money here, but yes, the government doesn't have any money. What types of projects are they interested in? Through PIF Round 2, we would like to support the development of adoption support centres of excellence, which bring together relevant partners, including social care, health, and or education partners. So you see once again that all the authorities being joined together in a hive-type system, where the moment, of course, a family has been engaged by one authority, they can't escape this Stasi-like net. This is very, very dangerous stuff. And whilst they're boasting about centres of excellence, of course, we have across the country many, many child abuse whistleblowers, and we have no movement on the inquiry into child abuse by the British government. Why? Because the government is desperate to protect its own members who have been involved in paedophilia and child abuse. Well, we'll end on a serious note, and that is climate change, global warming. Now, this headline has produced quite a remarkable response from viewers and listeners. They were shocked. The Telegraph here saying that reindeer are becoming smaller due to global warming, and real research has established this, Mike.
Right.
So this is important. Now, the Telegraph also ran a pretty exclusive article on the cause of global warming. We better remind our viewers of that. Here it is, because basically the Telegraph said that squirrels and beavers were contributing to global warming more than previously thought. So those nasty rodents, and beavers were causing the global warming. So well done, the Telegraph. This is an intellectual British paper. Now, we've been able to do some work on this, and we understand that actually there is a UN emergency meeting as ground squirrels now dwarf reindeers due to the global warming. So we can put this in scale for you. These are to true scale. So on the right-hand side, we've got a ground squirrel, and we can see that reindeers have shrunk considerably. Luckily, we were able to pick up some comment from the squirrel. He said, "I've no sympathy, mate. It's evolution, survival of the fittest, and the 21st century is ours." That was quite a statement. Apparently, a spokesman for the reindeers said that the UN better get off its arse or we're dead meat, and there'll be a lot of disappointed children at Christmas. So if you're worried about global warming, I think you should be looking into the reindeer problem at the moment. But I need to bring in George Bush, because the Mail here has got an article saying that a mere 274 million given in foreign aid to a controversial climate change organisation has disappeared. It's a bit like EU funding to Cornwall and the UK. That money has simply disappeared. But we were able to get extra comment from the ground squirrel, who said, big ears, the reindeer took it, honest. They mentioned weapons and ISIS. They're really pissed at their shrinkage. US squirrels are scared. So at least the squirrels come out with the key information on where that money's gone.
Right.
But it's not looking good for US squirrels.
Okay.
Thank you very much for joining us. That was a joke, the last few slides that we've shown, but of course this is the complete nonsense that the British and other mainstream media and newspapers are pushing, which we, the public, are supposed to believe. If you don't believe it, can we suggest that you get onto their websites and start labelling these organisations as fake news? Because of course this is an exceptionally easy way at the moment to register our unhappiness. That's it for today. Thank you very much for joining us. And if you're not a subscriber for UK Column, please consider taking out a subscription, because we can only do what we do with your help. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.